Good morning, Ms. Pam Jones. Thank you so much for joining us today to share with the board our capital investment plan for the fiscal year 2022 through 2031. Just so you know, I'm going to be recording your presentation for the board's review prior to our January 20th board meeting. So again, thank you. This is Ms. Pam Jones, our former district leader, Deputy Superintendent of Operations, who is here to explain to us our current capital investment plan. Ms. Jones?
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed your day so far. It is my pleasure to present to you Orange County's FY22 through FY31 capital investment plan. Before we get into the meat of the document, I would like to go over just briefly the foundation documents that we use to arrive at the plan. Many of you who have been around the district for some time were here when we did the 2013 facility study, in which we looked at all district facilities, looked at what their present needs were, tried to project into the future what their future needs would be, and then to create a report which formed the basis of about everything we do with facilities and capital. And they outlined deferred maintenance that we were going to need. They outlined the big pieces of the building like roofs and mechanical systems and when they were going to come due. So it's been a very helpful document and still forms the basis for the CIP. The second study that many of you have heard about is a safety and security assessment that you may have referred to in the past as the Safe Havens Report. This was conducted about the same time, and it went through all of the schools in the district, looked at the vulnerabilities that we have from a safety perspective, made recommendations that would help us shore that up, gave us some policy and procedure recommendations as well. And that is the document that we have used since about 2014 to deploy some of the safety and security measures that you see. In fact, we will talk a little bit in this presentation about the ongoing safety and security measures that we're doing right now. And those two came as a result of the Safe Havens Report. The third document that forms your foundation is a roof study. You may hear it called the REI study, which is the firm that looks at it. They came in and looked at all of the roofs in the district. They prioritized the status of the roofs, and they helped us cost out what we would need, project when we would need it, and that is what we build our roof schedules around. I will say that that particular schedule is updated annually. They reassess what the priorities are. They also reassess the cost, so we're sure we're working with current numbers. Those three documents are really forming the foundation documents that we use to form the CIP. Another thing that we do to make sure that we're looking out into the future is we'll have conversations throughout the year, but in particular as we're formulating the CIP with both principals and operations staff to determine any emerging issues that are coming out of our buildings right now. We want to make sure to the extent we can that we meet all of the challenges on the horizon, because most of these things are very expensive. We don't get a whole lot of capital money, so we need to be able to plan out into the future for those expenditures. I will say that Orange County Schools has always exercised good stewardship over our facilities. We know that they're not easily replaced. We want to make sure that they are kept intact for as long as possible and serviced for as long as possible. This plan continues that philosophy. This plan maintains the fidelity the Board of Education has expressed before about their priorities for capital funding. The first has always been safety and security in district facilities. This too follows that same prioritization. We also, the board expressed interest in making sure the critical infrastructure projects were done, in particular mechanical systems and roofs. Those are probably two of the most expensive systems in your building. And also to address other deferred maintenance projects as they come up in an effort to extend the life of the building for as long as possible. An example of that is at Cameron Park. You have been doing that over the last year. We'll be doing phase 2 in the upcoming year. And that was to make sure the integrity of the building envelope was intact. It had some water intrusion issues, and as you know, when water starts getting into a building, it affects a lot of different things. And so to maintain the envelope of your building is extremely important as a deferred maintenance item. In order to carry out all of those things, we are provided funding from Orange County. That is the only place that we get our capital funding for the most part. I guess occasionally the state will give us some, but mostly it is just through Orange County. It is allocated between the two school systems by average daily membership. And so what you see here is the funding that is available to us this fiscal year. I should note that even though this is a 10-year CIP, there is only 1 year that's funded. Year 1 is the only year that you can guarantee that you have funding for the projects that are listed. For this year, for FY22, we will be receiving $1,670,106, $1,670,106 in debt financing. You may have also heard this referred to as pay-as-you-go. That is not two different pots of money. So if you see those two terms, they are synonymous. At one point, the county changed how they funded it. They were no longer funding it as pay-as-you-go money. They were actually financing the CIP on debt through the county. So that's why the name changed. You can expect about a 2% per year increase in that particular stream of funding. The second area is the additional pay-as-you-go, and it also has an alter ego. It's lottery funding. And probably $561,082, which is what's projected for 22. That funding source does not increase. You will see that staying the same year after year after year. The county at one point required that we only assign projects and only spend what was collected in lottery funds. And it was in current year as you went. So that was a deterrent to be able to assure ourselves that whatever project we were projecting for lottery funding would actually be done. Because if you didn't collect enough funding, then it didn't get finished. And at the very least, it certainly delayed the implementation of that project. So both school systems petitioned the county, and the then county manager agreed to allow us to do an interlocal agreement whereby this became additional pay-as-you-go funding from the county. They front that funding equivalent to the lottery funds, and we are able to spend that just like we would pay-as-you-go funding. So we don't any longer have to wait for it to become available. I will say that we do check through the clearinghouse to ensure that the lottery collections are commensurate with the funding that we are getting. So we're not giving the county extra money, but they are being upfront with us, and that funding has stayed consistent over the years. The next funding source is Article 46 sales tax. This is an area where you can expect the largest growth. They project 4% per year. Don't know what the effects of COVID will be on sales tax, but right now the projection is remaining at 4% per year. That's what's built into the CIP. This is a funding source that's dedicated entirely to technology. The amount you're receiving this year is $808,317. That's dedicated to your debt service for your technology refresh, and then anything over and above that is assigned to just your technology upgrades. Those three funding sources are the funding sources that you can expect every year. Those recur, and you can expect those to come every year from the county with the increases that are indicated here. We have two additional funding sources this year. We're in the final year of allocation of the 2016 bond funding. The total bonds, you recall, was $47,892,000. We will receive $11,386,000 in FY22, and that is the final allocation for Orange County Schools. The county has provided over the last several years some supplemental funding to help address specifically deferred maintenance. Again, both school systems presented in their unfunded lists every year a significant schedule of programs that were unfunded. And so the deferred maintenance stuff, if you don't keep a handle on it, it catches up with you and becomes really too big to handle. And so the county has made a concerted effort over the last several years to give both school systems an infusion of cash so we could get ahead of the deferred maintenance. Next year, we will receive over 3 years, our allocation was $12 million, around $12 million. This does allocate by ADM, so it may go up, it may go down a little bit in the final year's funding, just depending on what the ADM is. But it's a 3-year funding. Last year we got $4.15 million. This year we have $3.6 million, and in FY22 you can expect $4,253,000 in funding, and then that funding source will expire. And the CIP next year, you will see neither the bond funding nor the supplemental deferred maintenance as revenue items. All of that goes toward funding what we need to do. A lot of our funding goes to mechanical systems this year. One of the big infrastructure, probably the most expensive infrastructure item in your building. The total allocated next year is for $13.7 million. That money will be spread over the schools that you see listed there: Central Elementary, New Hope Elementary, Grady Brown Elementary, Eflin Cheeks Global Elementary, A.L. Standback Middle, and Hillsborough Elementary. The board approved several months ago, maybe even a year ago, a contract with Sood Associates, who is the mechanical engineer responsible for designing the replacement systems for those 6 schools. They were prioritized according to need of each of the schools, how bad the system was failing, and Central Elementary was the first school that will be deployed. In fact, Central Elementary, you can look for bids to come to you for approval sometime probably in March. The bid should be taken in February. We have the plans and specs available now and under review at DPI. As soon as that is finished, then we'll be able to do final tweaks here at the office as well as with the designer and get that on the street. So you will see that very soon. I'd like to just mention that we would love to be able to do all of these projects all at one time. However, mechanical projects are such that they're very disruptive to a building. When you take down the HVAC in a building, you really cannot function in the building. So we have to structure the specifications and the bids in components large enough that you can get it done over the time frame and within the budget that we have. In this case, the budget is not necessarily the issue, but the time frame certainly is. For example, Central Elementary, the amount of time that we have is literally over the summer break before we have to take the system down and get the system back up so you can get a conditioned building. So that's true of all of those facilities that are there. As quickly as we get Central out, there will be additional work done on the plans and specs on the rest of them, so we will be able to deploy those more quickly, perhaps, than what we have done Central Elementary, but the limitation is still there on the time frame by which the work can be done. Limited stuff can be done during the winter break, during the spring break. Over the summer break is really our biggest opportunity to take care of mechanical systems. I would like to mention as well that you have 2 projects that are going to be finished in 2021. Cameron Park, phase 1 is finished now, and that includes mechanical replacement. Phase 2 will be done in the summer, coming up in the summer. So that will be finished by 2021. And one that I'm particularly excited about is the Orange High School geothermal project. This will be second, almost third year into that. and you should really begin to experience some savings over the next year because you will have a fully deployed project there. So I'm excited to see how that one turns out. Next on our list is roof replacements, probably the second most costly thing in your buildings. Roof replacement is a little bit easier to manage, both in cost and in scope, because you will only do certain segments of the roof. When REI looks at the roofs, they look at the amount of money they have available, they look at the natural fall of the roof in segments, and then they create bids and specs to conform to that. So you have a lot more flexibility in how you can do that. We still do not do roof replacement while students are in place, but you can do some of that work sometimes depending on the scope of the project during breaks other than just summer. Summer is still the biggest time though when you have to get all of the roof replacement work done as well. Next year, we'll be looking at A.L. Standback Middle School, Eflin Cheeks Global Elementary, Gravelly Hill Middle, Hillsborough Elementary, and New Hope Elementary, and we will spend $1.5 million in FY22. There will be other building improvements in FY22. Anybody who has been to Eflin knows that they have for a long time had plumbing issues at that site, and the restrooms definitely need upgrading. So when you did the slate of projects for the supplemental deferred maintenance projects, $1 million was included for Eflin Cheeks Global Elementary School in order to do that upgrade. So hopefully we will be able to get some hot water into the restrooms and to get the plumbing and the drainage issues for plumbing addressed in that facility. One of the issues that came up as we were talking this year with the staff is hot water tank replacement. Anybody who's had a hot water tank replaced or break in their house knows that it's dangerous, it's messy, it's disruptive, and it's very expensive to do damage control on it. So we have several water tanks across the district in various locations that are ending their useful life, and so Mr. Mincy suggested that we begin a replacement schedule for those. We were able to put $155,000 toward that for FY22. That will probably be a multi-year project, so watch for that down the road as well. Also, you're able to complete the outdoor classroom at A.L. Standback with the $50,000 that is allocated. This is a multi-year project. You may recall that there was some funding that was provided last year in the CIP that allowed you to get the site work done to some degree, but did not let you go very far down the road. So with this money, we will be able to get a functional classroom in place. Other building improvements, $225,000 is allocated for New Hope flooring replacement. This is a project that has come up through the years on the CIP and is now ready to do. You know that we look at projects that look like we could deploy them in year 5, and then they move up to year 4 and year 3 and year 2 and year 1. We are glad when they finally get here because they're certainly needed, and certainly that's the case with New Hope flooring replacement. Another multi-year funded project is the emergency generator installation at the central office. When I came to the district in 2013, they were talking about getting this work done and trying to find enough funding to do it. We are able to put a little bit every year to where we now can throw the $50,000 that's allocated here and be able to complete that project. Central office is particularly vulnerable when the power is down. And at one point, it seemed to be down quite a lot with hurricanes, with ice storms, any inclement weather seemed to take downtown Hillsborough down for power. And so it will be nice to be able to have a fully functioning building at the central office where they can do emergency management type stuff for the district and actually have functional space. So glad to see that moving forward as well. School safety and security, I mentioned this a while ago. This is certainly a multi-year funded thing that we were able to harvest a few funds and put a few $100,000 back over the years. The big infusion of cash, however, came when we were able to get the funding in the 2016 bond. And we, because of that, are able to move forward pretty quickly on getting things done. The cameras, the access control, the monitoring will all be completed in the schools by March 1st. Most of the equipment is installed. We have the training of staff that's still to come, but by March 1st, you should be well ready to have your staff in the schools. And these will certainly give you a much better enhanced safety access in your schools. We had it before, but that was an area where we certainly could use some shoring up, and this will certainly do that for us. We also were able to get the security vestibules in place. Most of the work on that is done now, and just a few punch list items, I understand. So that too was a big enhancement and was consistent with the Safe Havens report. And again, we were able to do a lot of that through the bond funding and then funds we put together and were able to do over the years. One thing that we will be looking at in the next upcoming period is assessments on intercom systems and radio replacements. There is still a need to get some of those customized and centralized in the same equipment across the district. So they'll be working on that over the next year. We were able to add an additional $266,000 into the safety and security line item for FY22. I mentioned technology a while ago. This is primarily from your Article 46 sales tax funds. There are a little bit of funds that come from the pay-as-you-go, the debt finance part of the CIP, but mostly it is the Article 46. For this year, your debt service payment is $771,117. That is to pay debt service on the refresh. Anything above that then would be available for technology upgrades. What will be available in the 22 CIP is $200,492. I just wanted to make a special mention about Hillsborough Elementary. $458,233 is allocated from the bond funds for the mechanical system, and also $400,000 is allocated, pardon me, for roof replacements. I wanted to say that while these funds are allocated, we have serious discussions before we place a lot of capital money in Building 100. The reason being is in the 2013 facility study, Building 100 was recommended for replacement. There, just like anything else, there comes a life cycle cost for running a building that at some point in time exceeds what the value of the building is. And so we are now at that point with Building 100, where it costs more to maintain it than it would be to replace the building. So the board had begun discussions when they had preliminary discussions about redistricting and other heavy subjects. There was some discussion about Hillsborough Elementary and its long-term use for the district. So rather than put $1 million into a building that potentially might be phased out over the next few years, we are looking at it very deliberately in the money that we place in the capital expenditures for Building 100. Now, let's be clear that that does not mean that the building itself is not being kept up and that we're not putting the needed capital to keep the systems operational. It's just that we would not have a wholesale trade out of like a new mechanical system before a decision has been made about the long-term use of that facility. So I did want to mention that particular thing. And that's enough said about that. Other projects, that's actually concludes what year one funding included, but I wanted to mention to you some of the notable projects in the out years for next year, 23, FY23. Part of what you approved as part of the deferred maintenance, the supplemental deferred maintenance, was some structural analysis and building stabilization at ALS at New Hope Elementary and at Orange High School. These were presented to the board as the slate of projects on the supplemental deferred maintenance. So I just wanted to remind you that those projects are out there, not in FY22, but in FY23. Also in FY23 is $250,000 to renovate the C.W. Stanford Media Center. Now retired Principal Ann Purcell constantly talked about needing to renovate that particular media center over the time, and we just were not able to pull together the funding for it. So although she's retired now, I know she'll be pleased to see that we can move forward with that particular renovation. Other projects in out years, we talked about the facilities use study being almost 10 years old, and we have programmed in FY23 an updated facilities study so we can look at what we have done over the last 10 years or 8 years and look at what we will need to do over the next foreseeable future for our building so we can stay abreast of it, get updated costs, get updated scopes of work. Also, a study about the plumbing system in several of our buildings. You're aware that we do not have hot water in some of the restrooms, particularly in the elementary schools, and we would like to see what the options are there. So looking at those particular things as an evaluation is important. We need to have an engineer come in and look at it, and it has to be sealed plans, so we want to make sure that what we do is correct and we're moving in the right direction. Now, I will say that both of those studies are important, and when we presented this information to the Budget Committee in November, there was specific interest about moving those projects forward as quickly as we could. So Ms. Rath and I will be looking at some of the capital projects and seeing which projects we might be able to close out and to perhaps harvest some money even in the current year that we could move these studies forward. We'll do that in the next couple of weeks and be able to bring forth a recommendation to the superintendent and then subsequently to you all as well. But those projects are planned right now in FY23. If in fact we were able to deploy those in this fiscal year from current monies, however, that money would be reallocated in the FY23 CIP. Also, we've included $500,000 in life safety upgrades to fire doors and dampers. We are constantly held in non-compliance from the fire marshal. Not only is it a non-compliance issue, we want to make sure our buildings are safe and secure for our students and faculty and visitors. And so while we make changes along with the funds that we currently have, this infusion of cash in FY23 will get us a long way down the road in getting all of those taken care of. So the next steps that we have is we will receive tomorrow evening the board's comments about the CIP. We'll incorporate anything that needs incorporating into the final copy of the CIP and put it in a format that the county requests, and then it will be forwarded to the county for inclusion in their capital investment plan. That is usually presented in March and April, and then it would be approved in July, for July 1st of 2022. At this time, that completes all of the comments that I had. We will be anxious, the staff and I will be anxious to answer any questions that the board may have tomorrow evening's meeting. And in the meantime, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. At this time, I will stop recording.
And I will stop sharing.